Hello everyone. So we are moving on to the next chapter, that is the Rat Trap by Selma Lagerlöf. Now this chapter is the fourth chapter of the book Flamingo of Class 12. Selma Lagerlöf was a Swedish writer whose stories have been translated into many languages. A universal theme runs through all of them, a belief that the essential goodness in a human being can be awakened through understanding and love. The story is set amidst the mines of Sweden, rich in iron ore, which figure large in the history and legends of that country. The story is told somewhat in the manner of a fairy tale. Selma Ottilia Louisa Lagerlöf was a Swedish author and a teacher. She published her first novel, Ghost of Berling Saga, at the age of 33. She was the first woman to win the Nobel Prize in Literature, which she was awarded in 1909. The theme of the story, there are two parallel themes. The first one, kindness, love, sympathy can change a person. And second one is need for companionship in human beings. The major characters around whom the story revolves is the main character, the rat trap peddler. A peddler is someone who moves around selling the things. Second is the iron master. Then Edla, who is iron master's daughter, and old crofter. Now the style of the story. The story is narrated in a fairy tale style. And the very first line of the story that reminds us all of something. You must have heard this line quite often. Once upon a time there was a once upon a time. So every fairy tale that begins with this particular expression. And as in a fairy tale there are ups and downs, and the story always ends at a happy note, leaving behind a lesson or some sort of moral. Same is the case with this story. Now once upon a time there was a man who went around selling rat traps. He made them himself from the material he got by begging in the stores or taking the things from the scrap and all that. But this business was not profitable, so he had to resort to begging and petty thievery. But then also his condition was very bad. His clothes were in rags, his cheeks were sunken, and eyes gleamed of hunger. Now, author says that you can understand how monotonous his life could be. Walking on the road, left to his own meditations, always lost in the thought of his own rat trap. But one day, this man had fallen into a line of thought which really seemed to him entertaining. Most of the time he was thinking of the rat traps. And so suddenly he came with a brilliant thought, a brilliant philosophy, that the whole world was nothing but a big rat trap. And its only purpose was to lay down the bait for the people so that the people could be trapped in it. Now what were the baits? It offered riches and joy, shelter and food, heat and clothing, exactly as the rat trap offered cheese and pork. And anyone who was tempted touched the bait and it closed on him, and then the person was trapped. Now this particular idea became a very entertaining thought for this peddler. Thinking of the world ill or bad in this manner gave him pleasure. Obviously, the reason was the world had never been kind to him, the world had never been good to him. And in this way, thinking bad about the world, he was in a way taking a revenge. So here we come to know of this peddler that he was a revengeful person. Now, this particular thought became a cherished pastime, something he loved to think about. He thought of the people who were already caught, and he thought about the people who were waiting to be caught. Now, one evening, while he was walking on the road, he came across a house, a small cottage on the roadside. He knocked on the door with a hope that he would be able to get a shelter. Generally, what happened was that he met with the sore faces, angry faces, and he was chased away. But that day, it was not like that. This house belonged to an old crofter who was living all alone. He had no wife or children. And he was very happy to welcome the peddler, to get someone who could talk to in his loneliness. And here we come across that particular theme, need of human companionship. He was living alone, and that's why he welcomed the peddler. He offered him food. Not only offered him food, he offered his tobacco. He played cards with him. And then he talked about himself with the peddler. Now, this old man, he talked about everything. He told about himself. He said that in his younger days, when he was strong enough, he worked as a crofter at Ramso Ironworks. And now, as he was old and he could not do the day labor, so he had bought a cow, and it supported him. And cow was a very good cow. She could give milk for creamery every day. And by selling the milk, he had earned 30 kroner the previous month. Not only he informed how much he had earned, but he went to the window, took up the leather pouch hanging over there, opened it up, took out 3 10-kroner wrinkled notes, and showed it to the peddler as if he was trying to prove. Now, why did the old man do this? First of all, he wanted to prove that whatever he was saying was true. And second, he got a company after a long, long time. And he was just, what you can say, bhavnaon mein beh jana. That was what was happening. He did not know what to say and what not to say. This all seemed very incredulous because suppose you are traveling in train, so you talk to the co-passenger. You discuss many things. But you never tell your co-passenger that how much money you are carrying in your bag or in your purse or something like that. Now the old man telling and showing, in fact, this all was unbelievable, and most probably it happened because he just wanted to prove that he was right, and he got carried away. He got carried away. Next day, both of them got up. They said goodbye to each other, and they went on their path. But half an hour later, the peddler was again standing in front of the door. He did not try to break the lock. He just went near the window, broke the glass pane, took the leather pouch, took out the 3 10-kroner note, pocketed them, and hung back that particular leather pouch over there where it was. He was very happy at his smartness. Without any effort and without any much issue, he has earned 30 kroners. But then he realized that sooner or later the people will come to know about it. And if he will continue walking on the public highway, he will be noticed by the people, and will be chances that he will be caught soon. So he left the public highway and took to the jungle. In the beginning, it was not difficult. But as he moved on, that forest became more and more confusing, and finally he got lost into the forest. The paths were so twisted and everything that he came back to the place from where he had started. And at this point of time, the peddler realized that this was his turn to be caught into the rat trap. That 30 kroner proved to the bait. He took the bait. Now, if he had not taken the 30 kroner, he would not have to leave the public highway, he would not have to take the jungle path, and he would not lose. So he realized now that it was his turn to be caught into the rat trap, and those 30 kroners proved to be the bait. He tried and tried and tried, but he could not get out of the forest. He felt that this entire forest was just like impenetrable prison, impenetrable, abhay, from where no one could come out. He tried and tried and tried. Now, it was late December. It was already dark. It was from the very morning that he was walking in the forest, and he was completely exhausted. It was raining as well. He had no energy left, and he felt that his end has come. He surrendered himself to the fate. He lay down, and as he lay down, he heard a regular thumping sound, as if someone was striking something, and he immediately rose. Those are the hammer strokes from an iron mill, he thought. There must be people nearby. And he gathered all his strength and started walking in the direction of the sound. Now this Ramso iron mill, which is now closed, it is no more functional, once upon a time was a big plant. It was a very successful plant. And its success can be gauged by just this particular thing, that in summertime, long lines of heavily loaded barges are the big boats, came through the canal, and they took the things from there. And in winter time, the amount of coal that used to come over there, because of the dust of that coal, the nearby snow was blackened by it. It was the evenings just before Christmas. Now everything inside the forge, that mill, was as usual. There was, what you can say, the coal boy was going with the bigger, what you can say, the rod, a long iron bar, going to the furnace, and it was just for a few moments he was there, but the heat of the furnace, you can understand. And when he came back, he was just dripping with perspiration. There were so many sounds which were coming. The big bellows, the sound of the big bellows where the coal was burning. The rain outside, the north wind blowing, the sound of the waterfall outside. And maybe because of this sound which was around, no one noticed when the peddler entered the forge. Anyway, it was not unusual. Most of them, they came there because there was a place for shelter. Blacksmith also took him as a usual intruder. And he looked similar. Long beard, dirty, ragged, and with a bunch of rat traps dangling on his chest. Now our peddler, he asked for the permission. The blacksmith did not consider him good enough even to talk. He just nodded his head without honoring him with a single word. But the tramp, what is tramp? Vagabond, tramp, avara. That is the word which is. He also did not mind it. He had not come there to talk. He had just come there to take shelter and sleep. Now, in those days, the Ramso iron mill was owned by a very prominent iron master. His only ambition was to provide good quality steel, and he watched and he worked day and night, day and night, day and night. And that day, he came for his nightly rounds of inspection. And he was not so indifferent as his blacksmith. He saw a ragamuffin sleeping near the furnace, so near the furnace that the steam rose out of his wet clothes. He went near the person, took off his hat to get a better view of his face, and in that flickering light of the furnace, he could feel that it was his old friend. Look at the way he addresses him. But of course, it is you, Nils Olof, he said. How do you look? Now, what was the reality? The reality was that this man with the rat trap, our peddler, he had never before met the Iron Master. He even did not know his name. But then it occurred to him that if the fine gentleman thought he was an old acquaintance, he might perhaps throw him a couple of krona. Most of you must remember the famous advertisement of Cadbury chocolates. Man mein ek laddu futa, man mein dusra laddu futa. So here, he is already troubled because he had stolen 30 kronas, and this was the situation he has got into. Instead of clearing the confusion of the Iron Master, he thought that this Iron Master, this rich man, considers him to be an old acquaintance, so that dusra laddu, that he may help him looking at his with some money. So therefore he did not want to undeceive him all at once. Yes, God knows things have gone downhill with me. But Iron Master was excited. He just said to him that he should not have resigned. If he would have been in the regiment, he would not have allowed him. So we come to know that Iron Master earlier worked in the army or something like that. And then he invited him to go along up to the manor house and be received by the owner like an old regimental comrade. That, however, did not please the tramp. He had actually not thought of it. That was something beyond his imagination. He was suddenly very alarmed. Now you can very well think why he was alarmed, because he had stolen the money from the old crofter who had informed him that he worked at the iron mill, and he very well knew that if he went with the Iron Master, there will be possibility of getting caught. What he says, to go up to the manor house would be like throwing himself voluntarily into the lion's den. Now what he wanted, he had just come there in the forge to sleep and sneak up as inconspicuously, silently, without telling anyone. So he refused. But the Iron Master felt that he is refusing because he is embarrassed of his miserable clothing. He tries to convince him, saying that perhaps his house is not so big where he cannot come. He informs that his wife has been dead, his two sons were abroad, and he was living alone with his daughter. And then he informed him that it was Christmas time and they had no company. So he invites him from the Christmas. But the stranger said no, and again no. And then the Iron Master saw that he was not able to convince the stranger. So finally he gave. It looked as though Captain Von Stell, now don't be confused, Von Stell and Niels Olof, they are the same person. Niels Olof von Stell, that is the complete name. Generally, when the designation is mentioned, it is the last name which is taken up. So it is Captain Von Stell. Actually, the whole name is Niels Olof von Stell. So he told his master blacksmith that most probably Captain Von Stell preferred to stay with them. And he returned. But he went away. As he went away, he laughed, and the blacksmith, who knew his master very well knew that his master has not given up. He knew his master would try. So this is the first part of the story. As the story is a little longer, so I have divided into two parts. So this was the first